Basically, what we're going to do is we'll have an introduction. We'll be putting dispositors into context. The topic is unfolded within the background of a rational, structured approach to interpretation, and we'll look at the use of dispositors starting with the study of the ascendant. Dispositorship, along with the topics of aspects and house combination, form the very important fundamental techniques or building blocks that tie or knit together a chart. Morin was a physician and mathematician and taught both at a university level. As an astrologer, he was of such repute that he was for 20 years in the exclusive service of Cardinal Richelieu, the fellow who is considered to be the architect of France's most illustrious period. The content of this lecture is drawn from Morin's 21st book entitled The Morinist System of Horoscope Interpretation. Morin's unique legacy to practitioners of Western astrology is a rational method for horoscope interpretation. His simple and elegant approach teaches how to synthesize a chart, to see the chart as a unit. Basically, as you start to go through book 21, you realize that he teaches us how to think as an astrologer. Just as in any professional school, you are taught how to unfold or to think in that profession, and that is what Morin is doing when you read book 21. He teaches us how to think. This tradition was taught to me by my teacher, the late Zoltan Mason of New York. Mason is remembered as the foremost practitioner of Morin de Villefranche's system of horoscope interpretation or synthesis in the United States, as set forth in Morin's monumental work, Astrology Gallica. Today's lesson, or today's webinar, elaborates upon one statement made by Morin. When judging the things signified by the ascendant, life, physical, mental, moral constitution, it is necessary to take into account not only the ruler of the ascendant, but also, if in another sign, to consider the ruler of the sign, which Morin calls the secondary ruler. This secondary ruler today is called the planet's dispositor. And he says that most often exerts the principal influence of the effects or on the effects produced or to be produced. So a note on terminology, as I don't know the extent of experience in the attendees, some of you may be relatively beginners, new to astrology, others you may be advanced. So I just want to make sure we understand the terminology. A planet is said to rule over a house where the sign is posited, but a planet that rules the sign in which a planet is posited is called the dispositor. So here we have an example. Mars is said to be the ruler of the 10th house, as the sign Aries is found on the cusp of the 10th, whereas Mars is said to be the dispositor of Jupiter and the Moon, as both are posited in Aries, a sign ruled by Mars. The relationship of a planet to its dispositor is analogous to the relationship that exists between an employee to his or her employer. Interpretation is based on a rational, structured approach of a chart based on the priority order of considerations, together with the use of imagination to form an image. While we have a very rational approach, what is as equal is, can you imagine? If you can imagine something, you can interpret it. So we have here a 5-step approach that the foundation is found in Morin, and it's Mason who detailed or elaborated on it. And as we said, what you mentioned first is more important than what you mentioned second. And here I have enumerated the 5 steps. We won't go through this detail, but we'll note each step as we go along from one slide to the next. But basically, when you always start with the ascendant. What is the nature of the sign on the ascendant and to what house to which it corresponds? Then the location of the ruler of the ascendant, first by house position and sign position. Then today, the emphasis will be who and where is the ruler's dispositor, then aspects to the ascendant, and then aspects to the ruler of the ascendant. This would be a complete analysis of the ascendant. Once we've done that, we go to step 2 and repeat the same observations for the midheaven, then the moon, then the sun, and the final step is to look for anything that's extraordinary that could qualify what we've observed in the first 4 steps. So how important is the ascendant? It's 80% of the horoscope. And when some people hear the statement, they say, oh my goodness, 80%? Yeah, why? Quoting Morin, the first house, whose essential meanings, the physical constitution, character, are of primary importance and the basis of all else, and which must necessarily be evaluated first of all. So we know that the ascendant corresponds to the 9 o'clock position on our clock face. So what can we expect? The ascendant is the body, mind, sense complex. The ascendant is the ego. The ego is defined as self-cognition, expressed commonly by the use of the words me and I. Ego is an expression of self-affirmation. I am a self-conscious being, right? In the first house, we have the sense of sentiency, intimacy, immediacy, self-consciousness. So other people say, well, what about the moon and what about the sun? Yes, they are important, but the strongest identification we have as a human being in terms of me and I is with the physical body. It's connected with your sense of touch. Everyone, please, who is listening now, please touch your arm, right? It's my physical body. It's me. It's connected with a sense of touch, okay? So if this is so, we now have a basis to stress the relevance of dispositors when evaluating the ascendant. Let's apply Morin's comment. The dispositor most often exerts the principal influence on the effects produced or be produced. So now we're going to go through the 5 steps and we're going to apply the importance of the dispositor with each one of the steps, but we start with the first.